In this section, I will demonstrate how to identify the lines on your diagram. The symbols for this, the icons, are located on this line just above your diagram. Notice that there is a hotkey for this. Also, you may right-click and grab the line also. The first line we're going to start with is a perimeter line. It is a horizontal line. Left click, drag across. Left click, you can hold it down. As I'm holding the left click down on my mouse, I'm dragging across. Notice the time that it takes me to do this. Now we have a real small little line right here that I'm just going to bring this up, and the hand hits on it, and that way I can identify that line. Then I'll just bring it back down, left click again, hold it down, and move around. Now I'm going to deliberately go across this line. This isn't white, but if you do something like that, don't worry about it. You'll change it later. Alright, so we have finished the perimeter lines. And now we'll move, I just moved down the line, and this is a horizontal ridge line. Hotkey R. This is a horizontal ridge line. This is a horizontal ridge line. This is not a horizontal ridge line, it is a hip ridge line. This is a ridge line, and this is a ridge line. The next line is sloped, and it's a valley. Notice now, instead of horizontal, we have a slope line. Valleys are sloped. Notice that we get the blue cursor, which helps us. And we have a valley here. I'm just dragging across. I'm just dragging across. Dragging across. We have valley here. Have to be a little more careful right here when we drag across. And a valley here. The next thing is the hip ridge, which is a dotted red line. Notice the cursor is dotted red. Drag across. Notice how much time that it has taken us to do this. And obviously, if you're not talking like me, you may be able to do it a little more quickly. Notice where we made the mistake right here. We just drag across and we correct the mistake. So if you do happen to identify a line wrong, you can correct it later. Notice that we have 4 yellow lines left, and let's move to select gable lines. And this is really any sloped line. You can have a half a gable somewhere. Any sloped line on the house we would use for green. They may not be connected. It could just be a half of a gable line, and drag across here. So now we've identified the gables. Now, these 2 lines here, this slope goes down lower than this perimeter. So what happens is it has to come up and catch to the valley, and it is up against brick or siding, and you would use step flashing. And the symbol that we use for this is a butt-up line. So I'm going to identify this, and I'll bring this up a little bit so you can see it a little more closely. And it turns orange for the butt-up line. This is the same situation here, is that this goes down lower than this corner of this hip, and then it comes up against some siding, brick or siding, and then comes up and connects at the valley. Alright, as you can see, we've identified the lines. Why did I leave this way? So I could identify these lines, and then when I finish, I take and pull these lines back into where they go, and notice that they're barely visible. In some cases you may not even see them at all, but they are there. So now we've completed identifying the lines. It is important to know where each symbol, what it means, and what particular area on the diagram that it goes. Now notice there is a blue dotted line. There is a yellow line, which is a default line, that we have not used. And we will work with these lines in another section. In addition to butt-up lines, we will look at these 2 together in another section. Now, as technology advances, we have developed a way to save some time to have to identify all of these lines. So I want to move to the same image. I want to move to the same image where the lines have not been identified. And this is demo right here, and we'll just go back to one that hasn't been identified. You do want to, before you do this next part, you do want to straighten up the lines just a little bit so that everything is fairly straight before you do this next part. But what we're getting ready to demonstrate is an auto line ID, which means you don't have to go through the process that I just went through when I explained to you what each line represented. So we've straightened this up just a little bit. It does not have to be perfect, but it needs to be the lines need to be fairly straight. Now, this symbol right here is the auto line ID, and the computer will identify the lines for you with a few exceptions. On really cut up complicated houses, it may leave 2 to 5 lines, and you may have to go the old-fashioned way and identify them after you've pushed and clicked on this. The computer has difficulty distinguishing between a gable and a butt-up line because they're both sloped. So my recommendation is to always pre-identify butt-up lines. Any line that you pre-identify, the computer will not override. And so we've pre-identified the 2 butt-up lines. And you remember now how long it took a few minutes, and I was talking, but a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, 3 to 10 minutes adds up depending on the complexity of the house. It adds up over the course of a day. But now all you have to do is go up here and click, and all of the lines become ID'd. And if you will notice that these are exactly the same lines that we did earlier. And then we just come in and pull these in like we did before. And we basically have the same diagram that we had before. Notice that I think that it took maybe a half a second for the computer to go through and identify all the lines. So this is a great step up in technology to be able to identify the lines this way. But you still have to understand what each symbol means and how it applies on the roof. In the next section, I will demonstrate how to do multiple structures at the same address. And by multiple structures, I mean a house and then a shed, or maybe another smaller house behind the house.